Hello, Michael.
Hello.
Today we have a question that says, is it helpful to understand the mechanism of how vasanas work in us, to curb them at least to some extent by understanding ourselves as ego? Is it useful to know how are we swayed by our vasanas and what context or circumstances tend to trigger their rising?
Yeah, that is to understanding what vasanas are. Firstly, is an important thing. Vasanas are our inclinations to attend to anything other than ourselves. So the vasanas are the seeds that give rise to our likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, hopes, fears, and so on. So it's good to understand the nature of vasanas. How do they work? They work because we throughout the waking and dream state, we are constantly inclined to attend to things other than ourselves, because the nature of ego, as Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, grasping form, it rises. Grasping form, it stands. Grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes. Leaving form, it grasps form. So grasping form means grasping things other than ourselves. In other words, attending to and experiencing things other than ourselves. That's what Bhagavan means by grasping form. That is the nature of ego. That is the nature of ego, is always to be grasping form. So because it's the nature of ego to be grasping form, it has inclinations to grasp form. Those inclinations to grasp form are what's called the Vishaya vasanas. So we constantly have inclination to grasp form. Form doesn't just mean physical forms; it means any phenomenon, any vishaya, any object of any sort, whether gross or subtle, is a form in this context. So attending to anything other than ourselves is the nature of ego, because that is the food on which ego lives. So as ego, we always have inclination to attend to things other than ourselves. That is what is meant by Vishaya vasanas. So even when we're clinging to self-attentiveness, when we're just trying to hold on to that mere awareness I am, the inclination to hold on to grasp other things, to attend to other things, are constantly there. That's why Bhagavan says, even though Vishaya vasanas, which rise in countless numbers like ocean waves, even though they rise in countless numbers like ocean waves, they will all be destroyed as self-attentiveness grows. It increases and increases. That means it grows more and more intense. So it's useful to understand that the vasanas are always there in the background, and it's the vasanas that are sprouting as likes, dislikes, thoughts, and ultimately, Bhagavan said the whole world is nothing but a projection of our vasanas. Because, for example, in a dream, we see ourselves as a person in a dream world. That whole dream world is nothing but our own thoughts, it's the mind that has fabricated that dream world. So the dream, everything that we see in a dream is nothing but a projection of our own vasanas. Likewise, because our present state is just a dream, everything we experience in this dream is just a projection of our vasanas. So we project vasanas only to the extent that we allow ourselves to be swayed by them. So if we see the world because we've allowed our attention away from ourselves. Under the sway of our vasanas, we've allowed our attention away from ourselves. The more we hold on to self-attentiveness, the more we are curbing the vasanas. And even though the world projection may be going on, it's no longer taking center stage. It's at the periphery of our awareness, because we are trying to hold on just to I am. And the more we hold on to I am, the more our awareness of other things will recede into the background. And the world is nothing but our awareness of it. It's nothing but our perception of it. There is no world independent of our perception of it. So understanding that this is the nature of vasanas is useful, because so what we are trying to do when we cling to self-attentiveness, by clinging to self-attentiveness, we are trying to avoid being swayed by the vasanas. The more we cling to self-attentiveness, the less we'll be swayed by the vasanas. So the question is it useful to know how we are swayed by our vasanas and what context circumstances tend to trigger their rising? The second part of this sentence, it seems to us that certain circumstances trigger certain vasanas. For example, if you have a liking for a particular type of food, and that food you suddenly see that food. You may be watching a television program in which people are eating that food, or
you smell the food or something, or you smell some food.
Oh yeah, or you may smell it. Yes. So those will seem to trigger that vasana. But though it seems to us that the vasana is triggered by the external circumstances, the external circumstances are actually a projection of the vasanas. So this is an important point. That is, in Bhagavan's teachings, causation works from inside to outside. That is, the cause of everything is within us. That is the first cause. The cause of all other causes is our rising as ego. Our very rising as ego causes the rising of Vishaya vasanas, because the nature of ego is to grasp things other than itself. The Vishaya vasanas, in turn, cause likings. Likings cause desires. Desires cause thoughts. Thoughts cause. So that is it's from the process of projection, and the process of causation is from inside to outside, from subtle to gross. That is, the more what is inside is only ourselves. From within, we go outwards. And the more we go outwards, the grosser and grosser things become. So the thoughts and the feelings that seem to be subjective, seem to be only in our own little private world of our mind, are subtler. The objects of the world are grosser, because they seem to be part of a world that we share with so many other people, even though those other people are also part of that world that we seem to share with them. So the causation is always from within to without, from subtle to gross. So if we understand that clarifies so many things. Many people, one of the most common misunderstandings in Bhagavan's teaching, because Bhagavan has said that whatever is to happen, whatever is to be experienced is predetermined according to prarabdha, and that we will be made to act in accordance with our prarabdha. People first think, if everything is predetermined, then we have no freedom of will. That's one thing. And they also think if we are made to do actions by God, then whatever we do, we're made to do by God. Bhagavan doesn't say that. In accordance with our prarabdha, certain actions we need to do. So people who try to put everything on prarabdha, it's all predetermined, they are not considering deeply enough, because that prarabdha is something external to us, something that happens to us. What is the cause of that prarabdha? That prarabdha is karma phala. It's the fruit of actions. Actions done by whom? Actions done by us. As Bhagavan says in verse 38 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, if we are the doer of actions, we will have to experience the resulting fruit. So we are the doer, and why do we do actions? What are the actions that bear fruit? Is those actions that we do under the sway of our vasanas. So what we are now experiencing as our destiny, the cause of that is our allowing ourselves not in this lifetime. In some previous lifetime, we allowed ourselves to be swayed by vasanas. So the cause is from within us, not from outside. So we always need to understand. And another reason why it's very important to understand that causation is from within, from inside to outside, from subtle to gross. What is subtle is more powerful than what is gross, because the gross things are a projection of the subtle things. So people often think, oh, my desires are so strong, I can't control myself. What makes the desires strong? From where do desires derive their strength? It is only from us. It is we who give the desire strength because we dwell on it. If there's some object that I desire, if I desire to have a sports car or a very big, powerful car, and I'm often thinking about how can I earn enough money to buy this car, because I'm giving so much attention to that thought, that desire becomes very strong. And then I say, oh, I couldn't control my desire. So when I saw such a car with the keys in its ignition, I couldn't resist the temptation of getting in that car and driving it. So it's not the external things or the grosser things that cause the subtler things. It's the subtler things that cause the grosser things. But the most inward thing and the subtlest thing of all is ego. Ego is that which causes everything else. Why? Because everything else seems to exist only in the view of ego. If we don't allow our attention away from ourselves, nothing else can appear. Other things appear only because we've allowed our attention away from ourselves. And why do we allow our attention away from ourselves? Because we have inclinations to do so. And from where do those inclinations being vasanas, from where do those vasanas get their strength? It's only from us. Who has the inclination? We have the inclination. The more we allow ourselves to be swayed by those inclinations, the more we are strengthening them. The more we avoid being swayed by them, the more we're weakening them. So we are the source of power. So we can't, if we blame the desires, or because I had such strong desires, I did this, I stole this money because my desires were too strong. I couldn't resist the temptation. Why are our desires so strong? Because we've allowed our mind to dwell on that. And we made that desire so strong that it seems to overpower us. But no desire can overpower us if we choose not to be overpowered by it. It's we who choose to yield ourselves to that desire, or at a subtler level, to yield ourselves to the inclination which gives rise to that desire.
We have to put that.
Understanding this working of how the vasanas grow, sprout into likings and develop into desires and develop eventually into this whole world, understanding this process clearly is very helpful, because we are then armed with an understanding, and we won't fall prey to the idea, oh, my vasanas are too strong, how can I ever control them? As Bhagavan says in the 10th paragraph, without giving room even to a doubting thought, dissolving so many vasanas, is it possible to remain only a Swarupa? It is necessary to cling tenaciously to self-attentiveness. However great a sinner one may be, if instead of lamenting or weeping, I'm a sinner, how am I going to be saved? If one completely gives up the thought that one is a sinner and is steadfast in self-attentiveness, one will certainly be reformed. In other words, one will certainly be saved. So we can't put the blame on the vasanas. We can't say, oh, I'm such a bad person, I've got such strong vasanas, I can never be saved. It's we who've given those vasanas the strength. It's we who've done those bad actions in the past. We did the bad actions because we allowed ourselves to be swayed by our vasanas. If we want to overcome those vasanas, we need to stop allowing ourselves to be swayed by them. Oh, but my vasanas are so strong, how can I ever stop? How can I ever overcome them? Why are they strong? Because we give whatever strength they have is strength that we have given them by allowing our mind to be swayed by them. So the only way to weaken the vasana is to refrain from being swayed by them. So having an understanding of this process certainly is very helpful in applying Bhagavan's teachings in practice.
Yes, and also to know, well, it's true that it's not that the situation triggers your vasana, it's you yourself, no? We are ourselves.
Circumstances do seem to trigger the vasanas, and those circumstances are according to prarabdha. But even the prarabdha is a projection of our vasanas, but those vasanas that are to be projected according to prarabdha, they will be projected because they are the fruit of the vasanas that we've allowed ourselves to be swayed by in the past. So it's a very intricate, it's a very entangled process. Ultimately, the cause for everything is our rising as ego and our allowing ourselves to be swayed by vasanas.
Yeah, right. So in a way, it's like that we have projected these vasanas, this world is as a way to transcend, to curb the vasanas, like a test in a way for our spiritual path.
Yes.
But
what determines which vasanas are projected as our experiences in this lifetime is determined not by us as ego, but by God or Guru. That means, what is God or Guru? God or Guru is nothing but our own self. It's not us. Our own self means our real nature, what we actually are. What we actually are is not doing anything, but what we actually are is infinite love. And that infinite love is what determines which fruit of which karmas will be most beneficial for us. So it's all a very, very subtle process. So long as we rise as ego, our understanding is relatively gross. So if our aim is not to understand this, but in order to begin to get an inkling of this, we understand it to the extent to which we turn within, because to the extent to which we turn within, our mind thereby becomes purified, clarified, and refined. So we're able to understand these things more clearly. Not that understanding is our aim. Understanding is helpful to follow this path, but mere understanding in itself is not our aim. Our aim is the one who seeks understanding, that one needs to dissolve back in its source. That is ego. Only when ego is dissolved completely does a perfect understanding remain. But in that state of perfect understanding, perfect clarity, there is nothing to be understood, because what is alone is.
Yeah, it's true. Exactly. And when Bhagavan says that vasanas that come from time immemorial.
Yes.
That's from past lives, right?
Yes. That.
And I guess that is because many of our vasanas in past lives, maybe they were extinguished, or they were dissolved in the past, and they led to other vasanas.
Yes. That is, vasanas are not static. Vasanas grow strong to the extent we allow ourselves to be swayed by them. And when we allow ourselves to be swayed by certain vasanas, they give rise to associated vasanas. So the nature of the vasanas is constantly in flux. It's constantly changing. But what we are concerned about is not about the individual vasanas. Vishaya vasanas in general take our attention away from ourselves. So we want to destroy, we want to eradicate vasanas altogether. So it's Bhagavan, in the 11th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār, Bhagavan compares vasanas to enemies within a fortress. So the Vishaya vasanas are like an enemy army. So it's not a matter of That is, he talks about killing them one by one as they come out, but it's not exactly, we don't exactly kill the vasanas one by one, we weaken them. So the weaker the soldiers become, the weaker the army is. If you've got an army of 10,000 soldiers, but they're all exhausted because of fighting so hard, it's not a very strong army. A few hundred, an army of a few hundred people can come and destroy them because they're too exhausted to continue fighting. So it's like that. We are not concerned so much about individual vasanas as about the strength of the whole army of vasanas. And it's by clinging to self-attentiveness, we are weakening whatever vasanas may arise. And thereby we're weakening the whole army of vasanas. Collectively, the army is weakened.
Yeah, exactly. And is there anything like a meaning in our vasanas? Like if we project our vasanas, do they have a meaning, like of some lesson that we should learn in the level of ego? Like, for example, like some I don't know, some relationship with someone. Maybe that vasana counts because I should learn something like on a human level.
Maybe exactly. Whatever we are given to experience according to prarabdha, which is a projection of our vasanas, but projected as selected. It's like a film reel. The projectionist decides on the film reel. In this case, though ego is one projecting, there is a controller who decides what is to be projected. So that is God or Guru. So what is selected for us to experience in this lifetime is what is beneficial for us. We can't exactly say it has a meaning, but it all has a purpose. It has it's those experiences that will be most conducive to enkindling within us the viveka, the discrimination, and the vairagya and the love.
In some traditions, and I've heard other teachers say that that we are other people because they are a projection of our ego also, so they act as mirrors. So
yes, in a sense, yes.
We project out of ourselves, and all the flaws we see in other people are actually our own flaws.
Yes. Ultimately, we are the cause of everything. That is, this whole world is our own dream. So who is responsible for the dream? It is ultimately, it is the dreamer. What the dreamer sees in the dream is just a projection of its own vasanas. So the dreamer is ego. So we are the ones we are responsible for whatever we project. But if we want a simple answer to your question, what can we learn from our vasanas? We know from experience when we allow our mind to go outwards, in other words, when we allow ourselves to be swayed by our vasanas, there's trouble in the outside world. That is, just allowing our attention away from ourselves is the beginning of all trouble. So we should we should use our discrimination that no happiness is to be gained by allowing our attention away from ourselves. And when our attention goes away from ourselves, what are we aware of? All these are just a projection. To whom do all these things appear? To me. So we should take whatever may appear, it should remind us. That is, whether good things appear or bad things appear, that good and bad is only according to our evaluation. Things that we take to be good or things that we take to be bad, they all appear to whom? To me. So we should lose interest in whatever is projected. We should cultivate interest in knowing to whom does this projection appear.
And are you kind of alert sometimes, or as usual, when you go, if you know your vasanas very well, like, okay, I know that if I go to this place and I'm going to smell the food, I'm going to I might feel the taste, no, to start to eat that thing, for example, and you kind of are alert to that, even though it's yourself.
Generally, if we're trying to avoid being swayed by our vasanas, we should also that is, avoid the occasion of sin, avoid temptation. You don't want to, if you don't want to be tempted, that if you don't want to commit sin, you don't want to be tempted to commit sin. So you avoid this, you do your best to avoid the circumstances that will give rise to that. But sometimes it may be your destiny to be put in a situation of temptation, because maybe that's what's good for you. Sometimes the temptations are good because we have then faced with the choice. Do we follow this temptation, or do we curb the liking to follow that temptation?
Yeah, exactly. Like, well, with food, it's.
But we don't go and invite trouble. We don't walk into temptation willingly. But sometimes we are put in situations of temptation, and we can make use of those situations by trying to curb the liking for that, whatever is tempting us, trying to curb it at its very starting point, which is that of a vasana. It begins as a vasana. Exactly. All likes, all interests, everything begins from vasanas.
So in a way, it's helpful to see clearly in your experience.
Yes, and also to understand that
that thing. I know that this is the map of my vasanas.
Yes. And also, it's important to understand, if we want to curb our desires, we can curb them most effectively by curbing them at their seed form. As soon as they begin to sprout, in other words, as soon as the vasana arises, if we can curb it then, that is the most effective way of curbing the desire. If we allow ourselves to be swayed by that vasana and it grows into a liking, grows into a desire, then it's more difficult to curb it than if we curb it at the very starting point.
And we shouldn't worry, of course, if we are at what level we are curbing our desire, our vasanas. So we just practice and forget about everything else.
We need be concerned only about one thing and one thing alone: clinging to I am, being self-attentive, in other words. All these teachings are to help us to cling fast to self-attentiveness, because if we understand the workings of vasanas, it'll be easier for us to avoid being swayed by them. That is, we all know desires are a problem. Desires take our mind away from ourselves. But those desires come from where? They were originally just a seed, an inclination. So if we can curb them at the level of very, as Bhagavan says, destroying them in the very place from which they rose. In the second sentence of the paragraph 11 in Nāṉ Ār, as and when thoughts appear, thoughts are nothing but the sprouting of the Vishaya vasanas, as and when thoughts appear, then and there it is necessary to annihilate them all by vicharana, that by self-investigation, in the very place from which they rise. The very place from which they rise means in our heart. That is, as soon as the seed, the vasana begins to sprout, it's there that we should destroy them. How do we destroy them? By vicharana, by clinging firmly to self-attentiveness.
But first of all, we have to make ourselves responsible for all our thoughts.
Yes.
I mean, if for example, because it's very common in today's spirituality to say that thoughts come to me and I don't. Thoughts come to me and I don't, without any will of my own.
People who say thoughts just come, I have nothing to do. They are not. They think like that because their minds are very outward turned. If they had practiced self-attentiveness even to a small extent, they would have understood. No, the thoughts are not just popping up like that. It's my inclinations that rise as thoughts. My vasanas that are rising as the thoughts.
It's just that we don't see clearly the.
Yes, yes.
We are projecting those thoughts.
When our attention is going outwards, we're aware only of the desires and the thoughts and so on. We're not aware of them in their subtle seed form. We become more clearly aware of them in their subtle seed form to the extent that we turn within. And this is what I was saying earlier about it's important to understand that causation goes from within to from inside to outside, from subtle to gross. So anything that is gross or external, what is the cause of it is something more subtle and more internal. And the deeper you go within, the ultimate cause of everything is ego. So the first cause is ego. The second level of cause is vasanas, because it's the nature of ego to have vasanas. Those vasanas in turn are what cause the likes and dislikes, which give rise to the desires and the aversions and the hopes and the fears and the attachments and everything. And those in turn give rise to other things. So it's the whole process of causation is from the subtle to the gross, from the internal to the external. So we shouldn't be looking for causes outside ourselves. Or what can I do? The thoughts just come. They don't just come. From where do they just come? They come from within you. Look within and you'll see they start as seeds, as inclinations, as vasanas. They grow into thoughts because you allow yourself to be swayed by those vasanas.
Yes. And I think that another part of spirituality can use that what you just said, that the causation first it comes from within, without that they can say that I've heard that, for example, that if you have a disease, for example, on a physical level, then something is let's say, how to say, inwardly.
Yes.
Because there is something that you have caused the disease from within. And so
yes, that is true. That is true in a sense, but the disease is according to prarabdha. Yes, but everything that we experience outside is a projection of our vasanas. But which film reel is to be projected is selected by prarabdha. So the prarabdha is the film reel that we have to. So it's if we begin to think, if all diseases are caused internally, if I turn within, I'll be able to cure the diseases. It's not like that. It's already fixed. If you're going to be sick, you're going to be sick. If you're going to be healthy, you're going to be healthy. Sometimes we're sick, sometimes we're healthy. This is all according to prarabdha. We are not to be concerned about external things, because having understood the causation of everything, the cause of all things, the cause of every gross thing is something subtler. The cause of external thing is something more internal. So we need to go more and more within, back to the original cause, and cut the original cause, cut it at its root. That is ego. That's what we need to eradicate. We need to root out this ego. That's the whole point of Bhagavan's teachings. And we root it out only to the extent we turn within. So in order to turn within, we need to be unconcerned about external things. Let the body be healthy or let it be sick. And of course, so long as our attention is going outwards, we seem to be this body. We have to take reasonable care of this body. We shouldn't be obsessed about it, but we take adequate food, clothing, shelter, all these things. This is normal, natural, if we allow our attention to go outwards. But actually, all these things are taken care of by prarabdha. We don't have to care about them. All we need to care about is turning within more and more and more.
Because that would be using spirituality to change prarabdha, which is not possible, ultimately.
No, yes, exactly.
Yeah, because sometimes For example, if I don't know an example, but if somebody says that, well, you've been married 6 times already, so obviously that cannot be your prarabdha. There has to be something wrong with you. I mean, so how can your prarabdha be to get married 6 times?
Yes,
So,
yes.
or something inwardly, that would be your nature too. You've been
That is the fact that your prarabdha is to be married 6 times, may be a reflection of what type of vasanas, what type of desires you have. It may be a reflection of that, but it's not because of that. Because that prarabdha is whatever you are to experience is karma pala, the fruit of karma, not karma done in this lifetime, karma done in some previous lifetime. But it's that what is to be, which fruit are to be experienced in this lifetime is selected by God and is tailor-made to suit the vasanas that we have. Because the aim is to enable us to weaken the vasanas. So the prarabdha is made in such a way that will be most conducive to the purification of our mind. In other words, to the weakening of our vasanas.